Ange Postecoglou at a certain point this season promised a trophy. They beat Manchester City, huge night for them. They take on Villa on the weekend, but they sit 8th in the league. And it's a strange one now for Spurs fans because now they're probably in the dilemma that they knew they would be in at some point. Do they want to win a trophy, sacrifice the league? Is that what's actually happening? Like, at what point do we go, Andrew's under pressure now? Because we all like him.
Yeah. I don't think he should be under pressure. If you look at these two sides,
8th after 10 games. Like, we're a third of the way through the season. They're 8th.
Yep, it's fine. Tranquilo. just give it time. Obviously, I'm a Chelsea fan. I'm not hoping for Spurs to finish in the top 4. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to finish in the top 4. But I think we need to look at Ange and be objective about it in terms of the job that he's done. I say it all the time. Spurs were on their knees when he came in. Style of football, turgid. There was no connectivity at the club. Harry Kane out the door. And what he did is he came in and unified that squad and got the best out of some key players that will be integral to Spurs going forward. You look at what Van der Ven has become at Spurs, despite the fact that he did get injured in the midweek game against Man City. I feel like Ange deserves a lot of credit. This season's not been perfect. Spurs have created chances, not been able to put them away, and as a result of that, they find themselves 8th in the league. There is still so much time to go. I believe there's 5 points between these two sides. Spurs win this game, there's 2 points between them, and it's a completely different complexion. And so I feel like Spurs are in a position where they need to regain some of that spark they had at the beginning of last season where they were irresistible and going forward they were so difficult to play against and the high line was working. That's going to be affected now. We'll see how long Van der Ven is out, but that high line can't work the same without him in it. But I think that Ange isn't under pressure, and I don't think he should be under pressure because really and truly, Spurs fans who I've talked to a lot of, they want a trophy this season. You've just beaten Man City in the last 16 of the Carabao Cup. He's on his way to doing that. You look at the champion or the Conference League, or not Conference League, the Europa League. Spurs are one of the favourites for that competition as well. And so they're moving in the right direction. Granted, you want to see better football. Granted, you want to see your superstars turn up like Solanke, like a Maddison. But you're going in the right direction. I don't think you should put the manager under pressure.
I'm of a very similar opinion, to be fair, but obviously I've got to put in a little bit of a counter.
Of course.
Because we've got to look at the nitty-gritty, and I do have a bias towards Ange Postecoglou because I do just really like him as a manager. But they have just been really inconsistent. They beat Manchester City 2-1. It felt like a game they were desperate to win. They lose to Palace 1-0. Didn't feel like they were actually at the races. Scraped past AZ Alkmaar. Battered West Ham, who are atrocious this season. And lost 3-2 to Brighton in a game where Ange said after the game... like, it's lucky it's an international break because I would have given him the hairdryer. So for me, there's just a lot of things happening at Spurs where I go, as much as I think the journey is nice and everything else, but if they finish 7th this season, they don't win a competition, it's a failed season. And I don't think, because we like Ange Postecoglou, we can escape from that. Because if you look at the flip side, that Villa squad is not better. That Villa 11 is not better than this Spurs 11.
No, it's not. They've got a best manager. I feel like Unai Emery is clearly top 3 manager in the Premier League right now. And you look at, and you talked about it, this Villa squad or Villa team on paper doesn't look that impressive, but it's what Emery does with this team and what he gets out of these players. And that's what's made them so effective last season. And if you look at this Villa side, who suffered a heavy defeat to Spurs last year at the back end of the season, they still managed to hold on and finish in the top 4. And that's given them the momentum to push on to this year. And they've started very, very well. They sit 4th in the Premier League table. That will be their goal, to finish in the top 4. And so this game is up for grabs, really. It's so early to make definitive predictions and definitive statements about who's under pressure and who's going to finish where, because one win can change everything. Spurs lost against Palace on the weekend, and that suddenly makes everything look doom and gloom. But the game before that, they beat West Ham 4-1, and everything looked great. So there's peaks and troughs within the Premier League season. The best managers, what they do is they manage to level that emotion and level that feeling. And that's what Unai Emery's good at. After they were flat against Manchester United, it wasn't a case of they were licking their wounds. They went out and beat Fulham 3-1. They've stumbled a little bit in recent weeks, Villa, but this is a game that's up for grabs. 2 teams that have contrasting styles. What I will say is that the Van der Ven injury is a big, big one because the high line is integral to how Spurs play.
It's interesting because think back to when Villa beat Arsenal at the Emirates last year. Arsenal played that high line. Villa put the ball over the top continuously, and Watkins was on the end of it a few times. Watkins doesn't look the same this season, I don't think.
Do you not think?
Yeah, I think. I mean, he's still playing in his usual fashion, chasing everything down. He's become a bit scrappy in front of goal compared to last season. And I think that might be, some players really do well because there's competition. But John Duran is like more than competition. It's like neutral fans want John Duran to start for Villa. That, I think, for Watkins now becomes a problem because he's always been the main man. At Brentford, there was never a backup because he's always fit. At Villa last season, wasn't a backup. Duran was there, but he wasn't in form. But now I look at John Duran and I go, for me, he looks like a starting number 9. And I think in a game like this, you go, I'm starting him. Because when Spurs play that high line, you want to throw the ball up to a pacey forward who's going to cause chaos and do things that are honestly completely unpredictable. That, for me, is an area where I think Unai Emery can go, maybe I can rotate there. But the rest of the squad, like you said, I think the fixture list is starting to get to them. I think they're looking a bit more tired. They're looking a bit more languid. You can't play the same 11 over and over again.
Yeah, it's the John Duran point is interesting. I haven't really thought about it too deeply, but if you look at Ollie Watkins, he knows that if Villa are behind or Villa are drawing after 60 minutes, his name's probably going to be up on the board. His number's going to be up on the board and he's going to get hooked because the way that Emery sets up this side doesn't really like going with Duran and Watkins at the same time, even though we will see it at some points this season. And so with Watkins, I still think he's top 3 striker in the Premier League. I still think that he is very, very effective.
Hold on. In another video, you said Nicholas Jackson is top 3 striker. Jackson, Watkins, Haaland. There's a few guys missing out. We won't be very happy.
Who's missing?
Kai Havertz. He's a top 3 number 9 in the league this season. Different conversation that maybe we have on another
conversation,
day.
Yeah. Isak maybe. But it's a fluid list. It's a fluid list. Yeah, you got me there. But John Duran is, again, there's probably an argument for him being top 5. So they've got
He's digging.
They've got a conundrum here, and we saw Duran's reaction when he was substituted the other week. He wasn't too happy about it. So that's a situation we need to watch very, very closely. But I don't want to denigrate Ollie Watkins too much. This is the beginning of the season. He scored important goals for Villa. Still the number 1 striker. It's just the case of, will Villa be able to sustain the form that got them to finish in the top 4 last year? It remains to be seen. I had Villa fans shouting at me because I said that it's similar to the Newcastle situation. They very quickly made me aware of the fact that they were in Europe last year, so they know how to contend with it, and Emery's very well versed in European competitions. But I do think that being in the Champions League, the stress of the competition in terms of the quality of opposition will play its part and will take its toll, not in this game, but later on in the season.
All right, let's have a look at predictions. I'll let you go first. It's a really difficult game to call because even the last 5 head-to-heads, I was initially going to say, Villa do well in this game, but the 2 times Spurs have beaten Villa in the last 5 games have both been 4-0.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky one.
I'm going for a 2-2 draw. I think it'll be entertaining. I think both teams will be good in front of goal. Spurs will actually take some of their chances, but I think it'll end up being a draw 2-2.
I'll go 1-1, mainly because I don't see Spurs losing at home. But I think they'll struggle because I think they'll be tired from the midweek game. The midweek game would have taken a lot out of them. Villa rotated so much. And Unai Emery does do really well against high line. But entertaining game, I reckon.